All right, good mid-morning, everybody. My name is Esther Manheimer. I'm the mayor of the city of Asheville, and I'd like to welcome you to the January 18th, 2024 agenda briefing work session. All council members and staff are participating virtually. The live meeting will be streamed on the city's YouTube channel, accessed through the YouTube icon on the front page of the city's website, or via the live stream. The live meeting will be available on Charter Spectrum, channel 193. You can listen to the meeting via phone by dialing 855-925-2801 with meeting code 5899. And as with all agenda review work sessions, we do not take public comment. Council and staff, as I call your name, please unmute yourself to say a quick hello. Vice Mayor Sandra Kilgore.
Good morning, everyone.
Councilwoman Shanika Smith.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Kim Romney.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Maggie Ullman.
Hey, everybody.
And two of our councilwomen today, Antoinette Mosley and Sage Turner, will not be joining the meeting. Let me introduce our staff. City Manager Deborah Campbell.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning.
City Clerk Maggie Burleson.
Good morning.
And that's it for the introduction. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the City Manager, Deborah Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor, and good morning again. As you know, these meetings are designed for us to provide you with some information, particularly related to your upcoming council business meeting, which will be on Tuesday. We'll review the agenda, and Assistant City Manager Ben Woody will be handling the review for today. I would guess that the majority of our time, though, will be spent on the other issues and updates in terms of our agenda. So at this time, I will turn it over to Mr. Woody to review the City Council agenda for our upcoming business meeting. Ben.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure my microphone was working. I wasn't sure for a second, but yes, thank you, Deborah, and good morning, Mayor, members of council. I am going to jump right into the agenda to make sure we have time for our other issues today. So I'm going to get started. We do not have a work session on Tuesday of next week, so we will move straight to the agenda. So no proclamations either. On our consent agenda, we have a relatively small consent agenda. Item B is a contract in the amount not to exceed $167,000. That's for the course of 3 years. And what that does is Parks and Rec Department is contracting for bus transportation to provide support and transportation for their summer programming. And this is something they've done in the past. Item C, or excuse me, go ahead, Councilman Ronnie.
They were right out the gate. I got a question about this one.
Yeah.
When I was reading the attached documents, I was trying to thread together the parts about MWBE businesses that might have applied. Is Try Inc. one of the MWBEs that applied?
Try Inc. obviously is one of the vendors that applied because they received the contract, but I do not believe they were a MWBE vendor, but I will need to confirm that.
Okay, so that was confusing to me, and I guess it looked like two of the vendors weren't able to meet our transportation needs, but it didn't say why. So if there are barriers that we identified in this process to contracting with the MWBE that did apply, that would just be so helpful to know, maybe as a follow-up.
Great, thank you for that, and I will get with Detail Rail and Parks and Recreation, and we'll get that information together. Okay, moving on. Item C is an interlocal agreement with Asheville City Schools. It is for an initial period of 10 years that allows for 2 renewals. And what it does is provides our Park and Recreation Department with access to ACS athletic fields, indoor gymnasiums, and meeting rooms, and allows the city to provide additional community recreation programming and to expand access to that programming. So again, good partnership with ACS through this interlocal agreement. Item D is a City Council resolution requesting the NCDOT and the selected design build firm for the I-26 connector project consider reducing the design speed of Patton Avenue, and this is the section from the Bowen Bridges to Clingman Avenue. The reduction in the design speed would conceptually result in a more compact and urban design of this facility. This design speed reduction was recommended by the I-26 Aesthetics Committee, also endorsed by the MMTC, as well as our Planning and Economic Development Council Committee discussed this item at their last meeting, and that committee also recommended to bring this resolution forward to full council for your consideration. Items E, F, and G, I'm going to put those together. Those are all related to our Parking Services Division and our Transportation Department. These are 3 contract extensions that continue parking services, and they include our 24/7 real-time video-based call center services. So that's the call center video services that are used at the parking deck entry and exit lanes. The second contract is what provides for our mobile pay options for our parking services. And the third contract provides the software that supports our parking enforcement and parking services. Each of these contract extensions support critical services in our Parking Services Division that are necessary to maintain our current parking operations. Any additional questions on consent?
My only question for council is whether or not you have a preference about moving the I-26 speed. I don't know that it'll be, I guess I'm just assuming it'll be a unanimous vote, but I don't know that. But also, is it important to highlight and you'd rather have it under new business? That's my question.
Yeah, that's the reason I think I've been talking with a lot of folks on the aesthetics committee. I also had lunch with DOT just the other day to talk about this and other things. And so I think it's a good conversation to highlight, especially since we're in some planning mode on Patton.
Then who do we have a staff member that would be able to present this item, or is this one of these where you guys would kind of look at us to present it to ourselves?
Certainly myself or maybe somebody from planning could provide any presentation or information that council's in need of. So we can do that if needed.
I'll just jump in then. I think, could we invite the I-26 Aesthetics Committee chair or a representative like Ted to speak to it and their recommendation? That might help folks understand.
Ben, can we assign you the task of working to see if there's someone from the committee that would like to come speak on this topic?
Yes, I am happy to follow up on that.
I don't have any other questions about consent. That was your question.
Okay, anything else on consent? Hearing none, I will move on to presentations and reports. We have a presentation from the Realignment Working Group, which is a community-led volunteer work group that grew out of the city's 2022 effort to review the structure of our advisory boards and commissions. The Realignment Working Group formed in May of 2022 with the goal of making recommendations for any restructuring of advisory boards. The working group has subsequently developed and administered a survey to better understand the experience of current and former advisory board members. Members of that group, their leadership did review the survey results at the November 14th meeting of the Boards and Commissions Council Committee. And at that meeting, the committee recommended that the full council receive the presentation. So we have that scheduled for this upcoming meeting, and they will be there to give information to council as well as share the report. Moving on under public hearings, we had 3 items scheduled. However, items B and C are going to be at the applicant's request continued to the February 13th, 2024 meeting. Those are items that were previously discussed at the October council meeting that were continued to the January date for additional time to work on engagement. Again, the applicant has requested those get moved out to the February date. So that leaves us with public hearing item A. This is a text amendment that is city initiated and in response to the 2019 General Assembly session law that sought to reorganize the state's land use laws. Again, that happened in 2019. To date, City Council's adopted 4 staff-initiated text amendments related to compliance with that session law, which is affectionately called 160D. This most recent amendment, which should be the last, is the last required change that we need to make to our land use ordinances. And what it essentially does is it deletes all references to conditional use permit and replaces that with the terminology special use permit. So that will now be consistent across the state. And the other thing that staff is recommending in terms of the approval process, as the council knows, use permits are quasi-judicial processes. So we are recommending that those be heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission moving forward rather than the City Council, which, as council knows, you rarely have use permits that come forward in any event. Any questions on that last change associated with 160D? Great.
This is Kim. I do have a question. I just couldn't get my hand up fast enough.
Okay.
Could you give us an example of a situation where council has considered a conditional use and how that might be handled differently? If it's going
I'm going to ask Brad to walk through that, if the city attorney, if that's okay, Brad.
Yes, absolutely, Ben. Thank you. Councilmember Roney, so to answer the first part of your question, which is, can you give us an example of when council has handled one of these? It has not happened now in almost 5 years. These are extremely rare that these came to council. And in fact, under an old standard that we used to utilize, the city did them much more regularly, but we switched to the conditional zoning process. This replaced most of what used to be called the conditional use permits. It follows a completely different review process. You now have a legislative process, which is the standard across the state, and I believe it's much more conducive to interaction and negotiation with the developer than the alternative quasi-judicial format. What we now have left ourselves with is only a very small percentage of potential land uses that would ever require a special use permit. An example of this might be a group home or some similar very specialized use may require one of these special use permits because you have to demonstrate that you're meeting certain conditions, and that lends itself to a quasi-judicial process. So the recommendation, both from my office as well as, to be quite honest, the School of Government, for all the local governments implementing these changes around the state, is to vest that very limited function in a board that already does quasi-judicial hearings. Luckily, we have one in our planning and zoning.
And if we move forward in this way and move it outside of the council's scope of work to our planning and zoning, what would it take if we find that we need to move that back to council's purview?
Council would still retain full authority to rotate this back and alter this to switch that authority final review body. This is one of the parts of 160D that is optional. It allows the local government to choose if the council wants to retain that or if you want to vest it in one of your other advisory bodies. It is something that I think you will likely go years and never see one of these at any function simply because they don't come up that often. And that is, again, one of the recommendations of it going to a body which is very specialized in quasi-judicial hearings, since it is a much more complex review format.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that concludes the public hearing portion of the agenda. So we do not have any unfinished business items, and we have 2 items under new business. The first is our downtown restroom, which council is well aware of. This is a 2-part item that executes a contract, first for the purchase of a prefabricated restroom structure, which was bid out, and second for the installation of that structure, which is slated to be installed outside of the Rankin Avenue parking garage. That was also bid out. So these 2 contracts will total approximately $391,000 with contingency. And of course, this restroom project is fully funded through the American Rescue Plan Act funds. And we'll have our capital projects team at the meeting to give an update on that project and next steps. Item
So this
B.
is another one that, Ben, hold
Sorry,
on this
go ahead.
one. So this is the Portland Loo project. And it was under consent. And I asked staff to move it under I believe it's under new business, because we voted on this when we did the ARPA allocations, but we haven't discussed it since, and it's been kind of a long time. So I just wanted to do sort of a check-in and see if this was still unanimously supported. Actually, I don't remember if it was initially unanimously supported. So, or not. Anyway, so there it is. So if you have, also this would be a better opportunity. I know there are folks that have emailed us about this project and commented and want to weigh in. And so I think other than the time when we voted on ARPA money, we haven't really had an opportunity for the public to show up at council and weigh in on this one. Just some context for why you're seeing it this way.
Yeah, I'll just flag, this is, as you're saying, Esther, it hasn't been a topic of conversation over the last year since I've been on council. And so some questions I'm curious about are, what's the maintenance plan and strategy? Because we've had downtown bathrooms and then we close them and they're not operating. And so I have a real curiosity of, if we have existing infrastructure that we weren't able to maintain, have shut down and locked the doors, the logic between why we would buy more new expensive infrastructure is hard for me to track. And so really understanding what the maintenance plan is for that, because that's just always a real struggle. I think sometimes it's easier for council to or new things, but we also have a responsibility to maintain all of our existing things. And so I'd love to hear more about that when we talk on Tuesday.
Absolutely. We'll prepare a presentation, and I think that you will find that this is why we did a lot of research on this particular facility, because it is safer and less maintenance, and we'll get more details though. The specificity regarding why we are moving in this direction.
Kim, did you have a comment on this one? I see your hands raised.
Yeah, just anticipating some of the other questions that might come up. I know there's a bucket around maintenance, and that's one of the reasons why I supported this in the first place, because it's designed for maintenance. And there is concern about whether or not we need to remove the trees in that area in order for this to go in. And I think there will be questions about that. It seems to me it would be unnecessary. So I'd love to know if that's a plan to remove one piece of infrastructure to put in another. I hope those aren't in conflict with each other. And then another one is sort of around resource mapping. On Thanksgiving Day, I was downtown and there were so few options for people to be able to use the bathroom. And I've interacted with a family with young children and explained that they had to walk all the way across the downtown area to access the porta potty that we have there. So I wondered, is there a plan for this being a growing our capacity, or is it replacing our capacity? Are we going to keep the other bathrooms closed? We certainly have need. So maybe that could be part of follow-up, or just be prepared to hear from community members that might have those additional areas of questions.
We will respond in terms of follow-up and more detail in terms of the presentation on this item.
So, you know, I was having a conversation with Hayden, the Downtown Association director, recently, and they're expressing an interest in some kind of partnership with the city around managing the existing restrooms that are off the corridor in the building they occupy downtown. I think to Maggie's point about what the existing infrastructure is. And I know that those bathrooms were constructed a long time ago, and the idea with the Portland Blue concept is it's virtually indestructible, whereas the existing bathroom infrastructure is just a regular non-indestructible bathroom. But it does, you know, I do want to make sure that we're you know, making the right decision, and rather than trying to reopen those existing restrooms to see if there's a way to have them managed. Downtown Association talks about having staff there so they can have, you know, eyes on the area and try to manage those restrooms. Versus putting this in, you know, I don't know. I don't know what all the options are there and how fully fleshed out they are, but I can see that council may want to have more of a discussion around, you know, around this now that it's pretty far down the line. I think all the design has been done, right? I mean, so there's a lot of work that's already gone into this stage.
Yeah, as well, Mayor, and you all may recall, you know, staff raised some of these issues when we were going through the ARPA funding process, but we believe we've made a good decision. You all made a good decision in terms of funding, and we're prepared to construct, maintain, and partner if that ultimately is the direction that you all want us to go in. But we'll be prepared on Tuesday to hopefully respond to most, if not all, of these questions.
Okay, I think is that it, Ben, then for the printed agenda for Tuesday? And so very
one more item real quick. New business item B is we'll have our budget staff there, and this is kind of the kickoff of your budget process, but we are going to have public comment on the FY25 budget process, and our budget team will also review their strategies for this year's budget in terms of reaching out to Asheville residents and stakeholders. So again, this is kind of the official kickoff of budget season, and that concludes the business agenda.
And we do have other opportunities and avenues and venues that we're utilizing for public outreach, but this will be the first time that they will come to council to officially have comments about the budget.
And with that, I think our next item on agenda briefing is our council committees, and we have one to cover today, and that'll be our city manager, Deborah Campbell.
Thank you, Ben. So Environment and Safety Committee will be meeting on January 23rd at 11 o'clock, and we have a very interesting agenda. We have 3 items, all are for information. And the first one is a federal funding update, and that'll be done by Bridget Herring. And this is principally focusing in on sustainability types of initiatives and funding. The second and third items are really interesting. This will probably be the first time we've had a newly hired and newly appointed chiefs come and present to the committee. So we will have the fire chief, Chief Case, who will provide an overview of the department, provide some information, kind of a quarterly update on public safety initiatives where the fire department is principally engaged and involved. And obviously we'll have information about the community responder efforts. And then we'll have Interim Chief Lamb with the Asheville Police Department that will generally do the same thing, provide an overview of the department, the structure, talk a little bit about some programs in particular, the drone initiative, and present quarterly crime stats for the year. So that is what we have for that committee. And I think that we will probably utilize the entirety of that meeting on these subject matters. So with that, Ben, I will turn it back over to you, unless there's any questions about the agenda items.
The next item is our 8-week agenda review. And I'm really going to focus again on budget, and just want to reiterate that really our kickoff is coming up, but there will be many and multiple opportunities for our residents and stakeholders to participate in our budget process. And we're excited about providing that and working with Tony McDowell's team on that. But also from the perspective of council, just want to highlight that your annual retreat is scheduled for February 22nd and 23rd at Harris Cherokee Center, Asheville. So we're looking forward to that, and that'll be a facilitated 2-day retreat to work on your priorities and begin discussing with council the budget process. And then over the following months, as we have typically done recently, there will be a series of budget work sessions with council. A number of those meetings are scheduled. You'll of course have the budget adoption process in May and June. And then another item that I want to highlight on the 8-week agenda is also beginning discussions around a potential future general obligation bond referendum. So we've got a lot of meetings and a lot of work to do around our budget and capital project priorities in the coming weeks and months. Any questions on the 8-week agenda? Go ahead,
And
Deborah.
I just wanted to add, and just a reminder to council that the facilitator will be sending out an email message to you all, one next week, and then a follow-up on the following week, the week of the 29th, to schedule some time to have some one-on-one conversations with you all. I talked about this at our last agenda briefing, but I just wanted to give you all a reminder. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. So that brings us to the last section of our agenda, the other issues and updates. And I guess, Deborah, I'll go ahead and kick us off for the first item. We have, we're going to get an update today on the Duke Energy Vanderbilt substation project in council. It's been a while since we've been back in front of you with an update on that project. And of course, council's familiar with this. We've had work sessions and meetings in the past. And today, we have Rachel Taylor here, who is going to do the run council through a slide deck and give an overview where that project is at. Also want to point out, of course, that is a Duke Energy project. And so we wanted to make sure that we have our partners at Duke Energy here as well. So we have Jennifer Bennett on the call. And there's Jennifer. Hey, good morning, Jennifer. And she is Duke's liaison to the city and city council. So we work very closely with Jennifer. Also have Justin Brown from Duke Energy on the call, and Justin Brown is the project manager. So we think today in terms of Rachel Taylor's review of the project, and then of course we'll have Jennifer and Justin here if any technical questions come up that Duke Energy may need to answer. And so with that, before I turn it over to Rachel, Deborah, do you have anything you want to add before we get started?
Nope. Thank you, Ben.
Great. So Rachel, I'm going to turn it over to you to go through the presentation. And of course, we're here to answer any questions as Rachel works through that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ben. All right. So yes, today we're presenting an overview of Duke Energy's project to rebuild the Rankin Avenue substation. And so through this update, we'll provide you an overview of the project, highlight the project goals. We'll discuss the development approval process and the timeline and next steps. So this is really an opportunity to put this project in front of you all before that approval process begins. So rebuilding the substation is an opportunity for Duke to meet the growing energy needs of our community while ensuring the city's ability to maintain or expand key facilities. So Duke and city staff analyzed locations for the substation, developed a layout, and refined aesthetics to meet the needs of the community, city, and Duke. So this update is an opportunity to review the project. However, specifics will be reviewed as Duke works through the city's approval process and as those additional details are made available. So following this update, Duke will begin the approval process and will continue to provide project communications. So I wanted to highlight here key team members, been introduced Jennifer and Justin already. And so these are the Duke Energy's team. They're also supported by Brandy Reeves and the Dalton Agency for Communications and Public Engagement, as well as Duke's engineering team supported by Burns McDonnell and McAdams Co. for engineering for this project. There are too many city staff to name on one slide, but many departments were involved in this project, and so they are highlighted here. Wanted to highlight the project guiding principles. These were taken from input from the community, Duke, and the city. And so there are 5 key guiding principles that really informed the analysis of this project. So the first is to provide reliable electricity by rebuilding the aging substation. The second is to have a site that maintains the ability to renovate or expand the Thomas Wolfe Auditorium and maintain Harrah's Cherokee Center of Asheville. The third principle is to have a site that is designed to minimize impact to vegetation, and then also a site that is designed to incorporate elements that are in keeping with the surrounding area. The fifth principle is that the project will ensure that the temporary substation required for the rebuild is portable and will be removed at the end of the project. And so to provide a bit of background, since it has been some time since we've presented to you all about this, this project to ensure reliable electricity with modernized infrastructure, Duke Energy is rebuilding the substation located at Rankin Avenue. The existing substation is more than 50 years old. And so when considering this rebuild, all possible locations for the rebuilt substation needed to be within that same service area. So Duke and city staff worked closely to determine a new location. And so rebuilding adjacent to the existing substation at Rankin Avenue and Hiawassee Street was a feasible option that met, again, the community, city, and Duke needs. Duke and city staff continued to meet to review and refine the recommended development approval process and the project aesthetics. Duke Energy will continue to work in close partnership with city staff throughout the planning, construction, and restoration phases of the project. And I just want to note that after rebuilding the Rankin Avenue substation, Duke will build a new substation at their site near Patton Avenue. That project was approved by council in 2019. And so before we go into more of the details about this project, I wanted to provide a bit of context for where this is located and the properties that we're talking about here. So this is a sort of higher level overview. You can see Harrah's indicated by HCCA and Thomas Wolfe Auditorium there. And then the properties that we'll be discussing are outlined in blue. So here we've got the Duke's property, which the longer rectangle on the bottom there is where the existing substation is. Duke also owns a smaller parcel up there right behind Harrah's. And then the city owns the property there at the corner, which is currently an employee parking lot. You'll see a gap. That is a paper right-of-way, and that gap is right there between Duke and the city's property. So wanted to provide that context as we move into the concept images. So this is the concept of putting the substation at the corner of Rankin and Hiawassee. So this would be sort of an outline of a rebuilt substation on those properties. So when looking at different sites, staff use the guiding principles when determining suitability of the sites. Additionally, we discussed additional goals. So rebuilding the substation, like I mentioned, within the same service area as the existing substation, also to be designed as an air insulated substation. So the site met that need. The site also ensures that the location meets or exceeds the footprint of the existing substation and provides a buffer for Duke to safely and securely maintain the substation. The site minimizes impact to the community by maintaining the character and future development potential of the area. It includes a buffer that allows for maintenance, expansion, or renovation of Thomas Wolfe and Harrah's. It also minimizes impact to the urban tree canopy, maintains a visual buffer for Lexington Avenue, and minimizes impact to visitor experience, and maintains monthly public parking spaces. Excuse me. So here's the proposed concept. This is a view from Rankin and Hiawassee there at the corner. And so you can see it's right behind Harrah's. And here is the aerial overview. And next we have this is the view from Lexington Avenue there. And so to provide some context, staff did an initial concept review and reached an overall consensus that the initial concept images reflect a well-designed open-air substation that meets the project's guiding principles and goals. Staff reviewed the concept images with specific consideration for the following topic areas: the vegetated areas, materials, lighting, including the possibility of a creative lighting option, sidewalks, drive access, stormwater, safety, accessibility, and UDO compliance. And so again, to note, these are concept images. So additional review will be conducted as Duke submits plans for approval.
Hey, Rachel, I fell off the call there for a second, right when you put up the image.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can I'll go back to this first one. So this is the image of the concept from the corner of Rankin and Hiawassee. And this is the concept from above. And here's the concept as viewed from Lexington Avenue. All right, so there are three main components that are needed in order to rebuild the Rankin Avenue substation. And so the first one, of course, is the Rankin Avenue substation. There's also a real estate process involved and a process to install a temporary substation at Duke site near Patton Avenue. So it's a high-level overview, but for the temporary substation, this requires approval for conditional zoning, and council will vote on that after a public hearing. So pending approval through that process, Duke would install the temporary substation and then decommission the old substation. For the Rankin Avenue substation, this requires level 1 approval, and project details will inform additional requirements as it goes through that process. This project is dependent on first council's approval of the conditional zoning, and second on approval of a land exchange. And so for the real estate process, Council will vote to close a paper right-of-way after a public hearing, and council will also vote on the land exchange after it's reviewed by Planning and Economic Development Committee and after a public hearing. And so pending approval, that would be the end of the approval process. So this is the summary of the key decisions that you will see. So again, council will vote on approval of a conditional zoning for the purpose of installing a temporary substation on Duke's site near Patton Avenue. You'll also vote on to approve a closing of a paper right-of-way located adjacent to 34 Hiawassee Street. So again, that gap between the city's property and Duke's property there. And then Planning and Economic Development Committee will review the land exchange with Duke Energy and vote to recommend that to council. And then council will vote on approval of a land exchange with Duke Energy for the purpose of installing a new downtown substation. And so here is the proposed timeline. So right now you're hearing this project update, and Duke Energy will continue to provide information and updates to stakeholders through their project website and other communications. And then through the rest of this month into February, Duke will begin submitting plans for review for the temporary substation at Patton and the Rankin substation. Moving into spring and early summer, the project will complete the development review process, including council voting on the conditional zoning and real estate transaction, and then the additional level 1 review of the Rankin substation. Moving into summer, pending approval, Duke will begin site work, which would start with installing the temporary substation and decommissioning the existing substation. And then moving into fall, construction would begin on the substation at Rankin Avenue, and that would continue through fall of next year when construction would be completed. And then in the fall of, in the winter of next year, Duke Energy would complete the restoration of the former Rankin Avenue substation site, and then the temporary substation near Patton would be removed at that time. And so moving into 2026, Duke Energy will begin construction on the new Patton Avenue substation. And so with that, I will open it up to any questions. Yes, Councilmember Roney.
So thank you for this timeline and helping us walk through where we're at. Building new substations is pretty rare. And I understand that we're overdue. What's curious to me is that this is happening in parallel with a pending project in the Chicken Hill between the River Arts District and downtown area. So how does this fit with the timeline on that project? Because we heard that that facility was necessary, and now this one is more necessary. So will we have 2 new substations? Is it possible because we have this new one, we could actually address capacity in a different way? Just how does that fit into the bigger picture of more than just this project?
So I might invite Jennifer Bennett to come on and talk about the overall context of these multiple projects.
Thanks, Rachel. I'm on, and I think Justin is on too, who is our project manager for the project. So if we get any technical aspects of it, or Justin, feel free to jump in. But and just to make sure I understand the question correctly, the Patton sub. So the temporary sub installation at Patton is designed to take the load off of Rankin while we do that work. And then the permanent installation at Patton is to address capacity. Justin, do you want to speak to that from a technical need perspective?
Yeah, so or at least my understanding is that we do need 2 substations to support load growth in the area. We had the initial, or the current substation at Rankin Avenue, which is now being rebuilt because Patton was not built on time. So we need to make sure that we keep reliable power there. But yes, Kim, to your point, we do need both substations due to expected capacity increases.
Okay, and I guess because we're going to be effectively building 2 in our community, I guess I want to just echo again community concern that we build for not just our current capacity, but for the future. And because of that, maybe you could help me understand some of the short-term versus long-term benefits of why this wouldn't be an air-insulated substation, especially because of some of the issues we've seen in North Carolina. Air-insulated seems to be having a layer of more protection from tampering or dare I say attacks.
Yeah, so the gas insulation substations definitely would take more time to engineer, much more time. They're also significantly more expensive than the air insulated substations. So we do need to be prudent with ratepayer funds since, we all have to cover these costs. So if we were to build GIS substations for both, from my point of view, we would have to take that way up to management because we have to show a true justification for the need. And in this case, since there's an existing one that's air insulated and it's, just aging, it's hard to make that call that a gas insulated substation is required in this location.
Okay, so then it sounds like we're still on track to have a gas insulated substation in the Chicken Hill River Arch District area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
So in terms of how, this is a challenging situation because you've got Duke doing their project and then you've got the city and we're somewhat intertwined. So as I understand it, I'm not sure this question goes to, but because the property that Kim is talking about, that is the old, for folks watching, the old Volvo dealership on Patton Avenue site, as some people know it. It is zoned for a gas insulated substation. That was a condition of the rezoning of that property. Will the temporary use of an open air mobile, it's like a mobile substation. I've seen pictures of it. It's like on the back of a semi-tractor trailer. Will that require a rezoning of that property? And maybe you guys need more time but Rachel, did you speak to that?
So based on staff review of this project, it would require an update to that. So that's why you would be seeing this project again, just to allow that temporary substation to be put at that location. The end goal would not change as far as building Duke's project to build a new substation there. This is just to allow the installation of that temporary substation on that site, since that was not, I believe, not incorporated in the initial plans.
Right, it was not, it wasn't considered.
It wasn't a condition or a permitted use.
Substation. So I would, I would want to make sure that when we did that review, because that's a zoning change, really. That's what it would. It's not really an update. It'd be changing the zoning allowance. That it was fairly narrow. That it just allowed for the temporary and maybe even time restricted use of the property for a mobile substation, and then reverted. Maybe we have to rezone it again. I don't know. Brad will probably need some time to look at that. That would be unfortunate. It would be preferable to me. I'm not excited about the open air temporary use, substation temporary use at that site. We spent a long time and a lot of community meetings getting it to where it is now. And so I think I haven't been invited and been participating in any community meetings with Duke and the neighborhood, and so maybe they've happened and I'm just not aware of them. But we had a lot of open communication throughout that process, and a meeting of the minds to come up with the compromise that we did. So it would be a lot of work to undo. It would be a lot of work we'd be undoing if we change that zoning. even on a temporary basis. So I want to make sure that we have the safeguards in place that we would be able to fulfill our commitment to the community in terms of the long-term use of that property.
I would say we did have a preliminary meeting. I think it's the Weekend neighborhood. I think we met with one of their HOA groups, and then we had the formal meetings with both the Weekend and the Rankin neighborhoods to address the concerns about using the patent area for the temporary substation. I think a lot of the concerns were about possible noise and then just general, additional traffic concerns due to all the construction going on. So I think we've addressed those with the neighborhoods fairly well. But if there's anything else we need to do, we'll also have renderings for the conditional zoning approval. So we can also share those with the neighborhood to hopefully get in front of any concerns.
Great. Any other questions regarding this item? And before you all leave, Rachel in particular, Rachel had a slide that had the Duke team and the city team, and I wanted to acknowledge that Rachel was kind of our team leader to date on this project, and I just wanted to thank her for all the work that she's done in concert with all of those other departments and staff, as well as Ben Woody representing the city manager's office. So I cannot tell you how much we appreciate the partnership with Duke. They've been very responsive. They've been willing to make adjustments when we've asked for them to make adjustments, particularly in the concept plan. So I hope that we will continue this very positive relationship going forward to finalize this project. So with that, I think we're done unless there's any other questions about this particular project, and we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the opera. Next steps.
Thank you.
Mayor, were you saying something? I'm sorry.
What I was going to say, I was a little surprised to see this next agenda item on our agenda. I wasn't surprised to see the topic because I think we need to talk about the topic. I was surprised to see a suggestion for a whole full-blown re-upping of the process we used the first time around for ARPA funding allocations. We don't have that much money left. And once you add back the money that was earmarked for step up associated with the Ramada Inn, I think we're under $1 million, maybe somewhere around that range, I think. So obviously, if you're prepared and want to do a full-blown presentation, by all means, go ahead and do it. But I personally am not interested in doing a whole do-over. I think that's incredibly time-consuming, and we're in the middle of a process between the city and the county. For example, looking at a low barrier shelter, which we've already said we were going to be committing funds to, ARPA funds, but we've dwindled down our resources below really what we probably need to meaningfully partner on that project. So I don't know that it would be productive to embark on a doing it again process to think about what to do with this less than $1 million. Well, it's right around $1 million. But I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead, Sandra.
I just want to say I support what you say. I'm in total agreement. I just don't think for the amount of money that we have available to disperse and go through the process, I think it just sort of didn't make a lot of sense to me.
So I guess I would, that begs the question of how do you decide on allocating, or you do not want to allocate? You want to.
Well, I mean, I think we don't have the full council here, unfortunately, and I think we can hear from other council members who are here. So this conversation will have to continue because we don't have Sage and tonight here.
Right.
But personally, I think we need to support our unanimous decision as a council to support the National Alliance to End Homelessness initiatives, our recommendations, which included a high access shelter or a low barrier shelter. And we've already verbalized as a council our interest in supporting that partnership, which is heavily underway and moving quickly right now with the county. The county commissioners have already set aside, I believe it's $3.6 million for this partnership. I don't know that we're going to need to come up with $3.6 million, but I think we're going to need to have resources available to us to partner with them when that comes together. And it is coming together quickly, and we will be getting a recommendation here shortly. So I just I don't want us to go dedicate these funds or start on a process that would result in dedicating these funds for other uses when we haven't identified money other than ARPA money for purposes of partnering with the county on a high access shelter. It's not just a high access shelter either. We haven't heard all the details about it, but the committee that's working on it envisions a shelter, but also a resource center, if you will, for lack of a better term, to meet all kinds of needs for folks, whether it's medical, referrals, basic day shelter services, which are currently housed over at AHOPE. This might be a consolidation of all those services and a new location, a better location. So I think council will be really interested to hear a lot of detail about that final recommendation, again, which should be coming out in the next 2-3 months. And we're going to want to be able to follow through in our commitment to partner with the county on that.
So, Mayor, I mean, we can certainly delay this conversation until we get a full representation of council, if that's you all's pleasure. Ms. Ullman, I think you have your hand up.
I think that's a nice idea, Deborah, to wait till we're all here.
Okay.
I'll just chime in kind of with some of my perspective. In the relative scheme of our organization, where when you put all of our budgets together, we're like $200 million, to the amount of process and time it could take for this relatively small amount gives me pause. I think it made a lot of sense when we had 25 million when we started the ARPA process, but I have less appetite for using our precious staff time towards that this go round. Mayor's suggestion of dedicating this towards, and we've already really put a lot of verbal support behind, but need more financial support of a high access shelter or something I'm interested in. I know other councilwomen have other things that they've brought up over time. So I don't have a lot of clarity on what the process would be, but I feel like if there's a process where council could come to consensus as opposed to a bigger process that is similar to what we saw in the beginning, I'd definitely be much more interested in that.
Kim?
Thank you. So a couple things, but I'm honoring your request, Deborah, for the end in mind. I don't want to leave loose threads and commitments. And so that's where I'm headed with this line of thought. I requested a meeting with Kim Marmon-Sachs because I understood that some of the council members have met with Kim, and I've heard that we should wait until today. So I'm going to ask some of my questions today that I have. But first, I know that we find funds for the things that we care about. And when I went back, I have the list pulled up right now of all the different applications that were submitted at the beginning of this process. We still have deep need and applications that weren't funded that were very highly ranked for equity and feasibility scores. And those needs didn't go away. So I have concern about the fact that throughout this process, we landed at this location in a lot of ways because we funded things that were not the highest equity and feasibility scored projects. And we have depleted the funds that I thought we verbally set aside to address the National Alliance on Homelessness report issues, to partner with the county on a low barrier shelter. So throughout this process, I still have those same concerns that we're not going to be able to back up our commitment in a really meaningful way. So at the end of the day, I'm less likely to want to start from the beginning when we still have so many loose threads and beginnings that have been unanswered. But I guess the question I would have for Kim while you're here, thank you, and for us is, one of the major requests that we have coming forward is for a Peak Academy. And we have goals, especially with our strategic partnership funds, to address the opportunity gap in our schools. And so to prevent us from getting stuck in this scarcity narrative and putting Peak in this very competitive situation for ARPA funds, would it be more appropriate for us to increase the strategic partnership funds and to partner to maintain the partnership to address the opportunity gap in our schools? But whether it's strategic partnership funds or the ARPA process, have we invited Peak Academy to formally apply to any funds? Are we getting a kind of ahead of ourselves? What does it look like for us to apply our metrics and get really serious about partnership? Because I know we care about our kids and doing better by our youth. So maybe the process part on that is an outstanding question. And while we're asking whether or not Peak has participated in RFP, I'm still a little unclear on if our commitments to supportive housing have been finalized. Is Crossroads finished, or not Crossroads?
Compass
Compass
Point.
Point. Compass Point.
Is our commitment to Compass Point wrapped up? Are they still outstanding funds?
They still have outstanding needs. We're trying to clarify the amount of those needs.
So while we're
as we
scrambling,
speak.
while we're scrambling with the Ramada situation and where do those funds need to go, if we agreed with the majority of this body that we were going to do supportive housing, then why are we leaving one group with outstanding funds? So some of that is like still curious to me, is like why we would leave those threads tangling and waving around in the air.
So Kim, so basically you've sort of been in agreement that we should not sort of start over with this process, but maybe look at with the council, full council, as needs that we can address and make an impact on without going back. You see immediate needs. Is that what you're saying? Because we can't really, that's not enough money to really, and I mean, when you talk about addressing affordable housing, you talk about addressing Peak Academy, we talk about homeless, but we only got like a little less than $1 million. It's like it spread so far. And I'm saying that those conversations we can have, but to open it up again, the whole process and the time frame, I think we need to sort of get with council and maybe we discuss within ourselves, and we've looked at the whole picture of things that we feel, the money should go towards, and deal with it from that perspective. That way we're not going back and opening up a can where you sort of, like I said, we have less than $1 million.
Yeah, it seems to me that opening up deepens our scarcity narrative problem instead of addressing it.
Yeah, so if we could, so we're sort of on the same page, and we can maybe identify from council what the most need that we feel, that we could actually make an impact. Does that make sense?
It does. And if the reason and the intention of opening it is to partner with an organization to address our opportunity gap in our schools, do we have to open the whole process to do that?
Well, see, that's what we're saying. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's necessary. I think we should more or less.
Well, you all may recall that Peak is not the only entity that has come to us and asked for additional ARPA funding. And in the interest of fairness, we thought that reopening it would respond to the needs, the inquiries that we've had from multiple entities, not just Peak Academy. But
I'm open to hearing more about why we would reopen it. I don't want to just shut down staff's work to try to make this case. And I'd love to hear maybe if some of these questions could be answered.
Sure. And again, I think I was hearing we wanted to have the full council here. I mean, I don't know that we're in a race. We do have to encumber the funding though by the end of this year. So that is the only kind of looming time frame I think that's imperative. And I will stop talking and see if Kim wants to say anything.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur with what everybody is saying. I think the decision originally to come after the meeting in September, October timeframe was to come back to the council with a way that would encompass all of the requests that have happened. So we have the additional, of the 72 eligible applications from the original RFP, we only funded 27. So yes, there is a number of applications that were not funded that scored highly. So that is a fact. We have also received new requests from a number of different places, not just Peak. Peak was the one that kind of came to the fore. So what is the best way forward? I mean, that's the question I guess we're asking the council as to, which way is the fairest, most transparent way to go forward. And I don't know the answer because we've done a number of different ways. And I think the proposal for going through another RFP, we felt would just give everybody an equal chance. But you are absolutely correct. The amount of work to go and set that up and to go through it, we're experienced with it now. We know what we need. We've got it set up, but it still takes, obviously resources to get that through. So it just depends where you feel the remainder of the small amount of money in comparison to the 26 million should go. I am in agreement that I think right now making the decision may be a little premature, just because there is a number of factors that we're experiencing at the moment as to where the funding should go. There is the commitment that we made to the low barrier shelter, and the funds that were originally discussed have dwindled. As we've said, that we have at the minute, the money that is left is 501,000 that we've got that is not allocated. And then, as you've mentioned, there is step up and things like that, which is another 500,000 from the ARPA funds. I know we've committed 1.5 million over 3 years, but only 500 in the end was coming from the ARPA funds. So that takes us to just over 1 million that we have left in the ARPA funds. And, whichever way the council feel that money is best apportioned, then, then we'll follow that. But I think the representation of doing another RFP, we just felt was the cleanest way and the fairest way to go forward for the allocation of those funds.
Ms. Rowe?
Thank you, Kim. So I have the document pulled up, and one of the questions I had was the ARPA administrative costs that we were looking at in 2022. We had budgeted 750,000. Have we already used all those funds? Are we now working in beyond that? And where do our funds for administrating this, do we even have the resources to reopen the RFP, I guess would be my question.
I mean, those funds pay for the ARPA project management and the project office and all the expenses that come with that. We haven't spent them yet, because it's over for the whole 6-year period that ARPA was running. So we are running at a decent run rate, slightly below expending that full 750,000. And previously when we did the RFP, there was me and then a team of people that I put together to actually do the evaluation and things like that. And I worked with ODAP to get the evaluation done. So yes, we can do that again. And the structure that we put in place originally to do that is there still, and we would apply the same structure to a new RFP if we were going through it. So the heavy lift that we had in the first instance is negated a little bit, but obviously we still need people to do the evaluation, and it depends on how many applications we get. If we get another 80, we have to establish eligibility with the legal team that people are eligible, and then go through the evaluation, and then the work that you had to do with the city council as well to make that decision. You know, we presented the results to you, and then, you know, you had to go through a fairly detailed period to actually select who you selected in the first instance. So, you know, I think for everybody, it is a big lift, but you know, we can do it. Whatever you want us to do, I mean, we can do. I think the RFP would probably be the heaviest lift, but also, you know, a fair, transparent way to go about it. So it just depends what you would support and what you would wish us to do.
And the only thing I would add is that those administrative costs, Kim, are related a lot to contract monitoring over the extent of the time period where our partners are receiving dollars and finishing up on their projects.
Yes, because we've moved to the stage now with the projects that we have currently, where we are managing the performance and also trying to look at impact measures. And the focus now, and that's where I am today, actually looking at with other funders in Buncombe County, at what we do with the performance management and how we measure impact and how we look at how successful our funding is, whether what we intended to achieve through funding these partners through ARPA in this instance, but also all the other grants that we have, how successful are we at putting the money in the right place to achieve the solutions that we require. And there is not as much focus on that. Everybody focuses on the initial piece of funding and the fiscal management. But we are all looking with Buncombe County, Explore Asheville, TDA, everybody, at how we measure what we're doing. So those funds are continuing to support all of the projects that we've got running with their performance management and this impact measurement, but also supporting those nonprofits to be successful in using the money in the way that we intended. And there is a lot more support that is needed that I think is recognized initially when we're trying to fund these groups, because they're not used to this unprecedented amount of money. But it's very successful. We're working in partnership with everybody. And that's what those funds are doing now for the coming period, is just to support them to make sure that they're successful in delivering those projects as we expected them to.
Thank you. I'm sorry to take up so much time. This obviously could have been answered before. That's why I requested a call with Kim. So another part of resource mapping that I hope could be beneficial to this council is at the Equity and Engagement Committee level. At our meeting this week, we talked about the request to grow the strategic partnership funds and whether or not we should hold the $242,000 for the next cycle or have a third allocation process now. So once again, I think because we often just look at one thing at a time instead of zooming out to the big picture, we don't necessarily get to talk about what are all the pieces of the puzzle. For example, I know we used, it says 1.6 million for parking revenue loss, but another pool of this funding that we've talked about is, was there ARPA fund used for McCormick Field at the end of the day, or is that a placeholder? Is there any reason why we would have additional ARPA funds that need to be allocated at the last minute, or is this truly the end of the conversation? So as we move towards a full council conversation, seeing how this fits overall with our general fund balance, our strategic partnership funds, are we eligible for the state funding for McCormick Field or not? And then once again, keeping us abreast of the timeline, because it's still it's still a very big concern to me that we would approve the National Alliance to End Homelessness report and then not plan to back it up with real dollars for the solutions that we've committed to. and we need to reduce homelessness in our community. So I'll
Again,
zip it.
a little lost. I mean, I think we're having a real hybrid conversation of like what I hope our management team brings to us and what our policy conversation is. So I want to like bring us back to our table with the policymakers, which is like, I'm not hearing anyone of the 5 that are on the call advocating for going through an open RFP process. And then I think the outstanding question is then how are we going to decide? And I don't know that any of us have a clear idea on that, but I feel like I'm trying to just synthesize out what I'm hearing because it's been like real up and down on what our role is and what our role isn't. And then I think we're hearing different ideas of like what policy places we could prioritize. I definitely am very eager to see what we can do with our homelessness strategies. I also want us to really stay focused on, we have aligned priorities. There's 6 council priorities, and to be really focused on running this through those 6. There's a lot of different things that we do for the community. But if we're looking at housing and anyway, so I think that's a lens that we can use for this as well.
And
I'm interested in us coming.
Sorry. I'm sorry,
Deborah,
Shanika.
I don't know if y'all can. I don't know if y'all
you.
can hear me, but yeah, I'm interested in just having this conversation once we have all members here to weigh in. I think I'm like Maggie and the rest of the ladies. I don't think anyone's completely interested in opening up a new RFP process, but I do think we need to see the bigger picture, and the bigger picture would be what are the outstanding organizations that scored high but did not get funded in our last award decision. Then also, who are the new applicants? Who are the new where are the new requests? How much are they asking for? Can we all see that in one place so that we can make a decision on how to move forward? In my opinion, I don't think we have enough to go to the table and fund a low barrier shelter. But I don't know performance-wise with the other organizations who have been allocated money, if there won't be money back on the table because they are unable to utilize the funds that they were awarded. So I think the conversation continues, but we can come back with a bigger picture of what decision we're going to make.
Absolutely. We will be prepared, and we actually had a little bit of that information, Shanika, that you just mentioned in our presentation today, but we will come back. We'll figure out. I'll work with the mayor in terms of when she feels this subject matter may come back to full council, and I hope this kind of a session or part of the budget discussions. If we won't be broad picture, but we'll talk about how we present this information and further
then
this
also,
conversation.
Deborah, specific to low barrier shelter, I believe that was an early commitment we had, and I don't know if we dedicated a dollar amount to that, but a lot of requests and changes happened in course, which landed us where we are today. I don't think
Correct.
We have the full amount that we are. I want to see that story too.
Okay.
I think we just need a full picture, and then we'll be able to put our minds together and decide the best path forward.
Sounds good. We can do that. All right. Well, Mayor, if there is no further questions, concerns, I think that was our last item.
Yeah, I feel like we were super crystal clear, giving you direction there. So guys will do the post meeting. What do you think they meant? I don't know. What do you think they meant? But it doesn't really matter because we're going to talk about it again. So, so good. All right. Thanks, everyone. We will see you Tuesday night for City Council.
All righty. Bye-bye.